G650GS, yo. Just kidding. Hey, if you could subscribe, it'd be totally awesome. Thanks.
All right, guys, this is the BMW G650GS SERTAO. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Basically, that is a Dakar from previous years. It is the F650GS from previous years. As we know, that all went to a twin-cylinder 800cc motor. They still called it the 650, then they called it the 700. And then they came back out with the G650GS. Now this is a longer suspension, it's a bit taller, has a bit more travel, and makes it a bit more off-road capable than the standard G650GS. Let's go over it really quick. We've done the G650GS. I think we've even done a video on the F650GS. Great bikes. This kind of brings it into a different category because of its height. A lot of people look at this bike as sort of a beginner bike, something easy and approachable with a low seat height. Most calls I get on a G650GS is, can I lower it more? So this is going the other direction, so it's going up rather than down. And it does make it a lot more capable off-road. So it's putting it in a class with the KLR 650. You've got a Versus 650, and you've got the V-Strom 650. Those are basically the competing motorcycles to this. I know there's a lot of others. I mean, you could say KTM 690, but that's a totally different beast. Anyways, what are the differences in a sense from the G650 to, say, a KLR? This bike feels a lot more stable on the highway. And you've got kind of that BMW reputation. I believe this is a much better motor and just kind of a better platform, a lot longer lasting platform than the KLR 650. And you can really, these are a little bit of a step up in price, but still in the used market, you're not really all that far off. I would kind of go this direction if you can get the SERTAO. In the standard G650GS, they're a bit short. So the KLR 650 tends to do a bit better just because you've got some more ground clearance. If that doesn't simplify things. There's some interesting things about this. The exhaust is totally interesting because I don't know why that is. You'll notice right down here, there's no exhaust pipe here. It's actually coming from the other side and coming over this way and out that way. It looks like it's got dual exhaust. It's only single. That's a big, mass amount of weight that's really not necessary. So you can yank that off and throw on a single-sided exhaust system. You'll save yourself about 30-40 pounds. As far as comfort and all that, basically it's the same as the F650GS and the G650GS. So let's go ahead and take it for a ride. First, we're going to do a little parking lot routine. This is a really well-balanced bike. So as long as you can kind of touch the ground, I always tell people, don't worry about it being so high. You can touch the ground with one foot. Just learn how to do that a bit better, because I pretty much, most of the bikes I ride, I can only touch the ground with one foot. It's low speed, super easy to manage the power. It doesn't really pull or push. People like that power on this bike. You can turn it really sharp. You can ride it really, really slow, and it's very balanced. Very, very balanced. Makes it really easy. Part of that is the fuel being in the rear of the bike. It keeps it a little bit, not just lower, which is one thing, but it also balances out the bike, so you have a little bit more weight in the back versus all the weight being in the front. We're going to take this baby out and go out to the windy roads and give you kind of more review on how it performs. A couple quick things I'd like to mention that they have changed on this bike, which are kind of cool. So the headlight has been changed from the F650GS, and I think the later model, or the earlier models of the G650GS as well. This whole light assembly looks pretty cool with a little air intake that goes nowhere. But the headlight assembly and this wind protection is way better than the standard version. Oh, one thing else you'll notice, look how far this thing leans over. It is amazing. And that's the way it does it. They're kind of limited the way they attach this this kickstand, that's as far as they can actually make it. They can't make it any longer. But it does have a center stand, and that leaning that far over actually helps with the oil change, because there's a oil sump up here by where the gas tank would normally be, and you have to drain that, and with it leaned over that far, it makes it real easy. All right, let's get out here on the road and give her a little ride. Well, it pulls up the front wheel pretty easily. I've noticed, one of the things I noticed about the G650GS, your tachometer, if you can see it, is right down here. And there's really no way to just look down and see what your tachometer is. You have to kind of go, oh, okay, it's 4,000 RPM. That's kind of I mean, I don't like it, but it's not that big a deal. I don't really need to look at it. Now this is a single cylinder motorcycle, and with the single cylinder you'd expect some vibration, and there's a little bit, but it's not that bad. In fact, I mean, if you compare it to the other single cylinder, you know, the KLR 650, this is really smooth compared to that. Really, really smooth. In fact, you really just don't notice it. You notice it at lower RPMs a little bit, but once the motor starts spinning up, it's pretty smooth. This bike has the TKC 80s on it, a little bit more off-road worthy than the standard tires. And you'd expect something like that, since this bike is really a lot better for off-road than the standard version. You do get heated grips. There's a switch up here, not sure you can see it. I have to want to lean down to show you that, but it's easy to see from the driver's seat there. There's a couple different settings for that, high and low. Right in front of that is your emergency flashers, which, you know, whatever. And not likely to ever need that. These motors are unbelievably reliable. Other than that, let's see, you've got heated grips. There's no cruise control. You do get ABS. And I believe there's an ABS off switch. I just, you know, need to look around and see. Oh, there it is, big red button. Real easy. So that's nice. You can just turn the ABS off for off-road use. That sure makes it great. This wind protection is fantastic. It really works. It is, oh gosh, they should put that on every one of these. But it's a whole new dash assembly, so you really can't get it on the standard version. But man, I think it'd be worth swapping it out, because that is so nice. What a great touch. The bike is a really easy bike to manage. The power is really good. Cruising along at 80 miles an hour is no problem all day long. Not that you can drive 80 miles an hour. Okay, so at the speed limit, no problem. Let's see, here's this bridge that's kind of bouncy. Oh, that is no problem whatsoever. You know, with this longer suspension, you get a little bit softer ride and a lot more suspension travel. And some of the things I notice is if you go really hard into obstacles that would bottom out the standard version, this doesn't even hesitate. It just goes right on through it. Going into a steep parking lot really fast, on the standard version, I might bottom it out. On this one, no way. It really makes it, it's a vast improvement. And what I'm curious about is just how well does it handle with that extra travel? You know, is it going to wallow a little bit, or is it going to be, it feels the same. The ergonomics of the bike are exactly the same as the regular standard G650GS. They keep your feet high. The pegs are a little bit higher than on some other bikes, but it's not cramped. It's still comfortable. Getting off of something like a larger adventure bike, you go, well, the pegs are kind of high. But, and maybe it'd be the same with coming from a KLR. The thing about the KLR is that the KLR 650 is something, it's a great workhorse bike,
but it's really not that great for doing any kind of long distance. At any kind of speed, it'll start to use oil. Just the motor's not meant to be riding at that RPM, and this bike certainly can, no problem. The difference though with that, with the other bike that I hadn't mentioned, that is the Versys 650. The Versys 650 and the standard version of the G650GS may be somewhat comparable. You'll find that the Versys 650 has a bit more power than this bike. It certainly feels like it. And it seems to handle freeways a little bit better than this bike, just because it's not a single cylinder bike, and it seems to just be a bit smoother on long distance travel. And then the other bike to mention, and what I would say is that the Versys is more street oriented, where like when you get the SERTAO, it's more dirt oriented. So if you're going to do a lot more dirt travel, or you're going to do a bit more extreme dirt travel, more off-road type things, some trails, then this would be a better bike. Then there's the V-Strom 650, or they call the DL 650. That's from Suzuki. And that's much more street oriented. That bike can still go off-road, but it's much more street oriented, and it feels like a much bigger bike. It's a V-twin, and so it's quite smooth on long distance. But as far as ergonomics, this feels like it has a bit more room, yet it feels also like a smaller bike. If that makes sense. I think that the Versys just feels like a larger machine. The frontal area here is a lot larger, and sometimes that can be intimidating to riders a little bit. This feels smaller and more compact. It feels lighter, and it acts a little bit more agile. These are fantastic motorcycles. I highly recommend them, you know, not just for the beginner, but it's a fantastic bike. You know, it'll take you to a certain distance. You know, the off-road, it's not going to be a really fast off-road bike like a dirt bike would, or, you know, maybe like a KTM 690 Enduro. It's not an Enduro bike, right? It's more of an adventure bike, or a dual sport bike that's going to be able to do both street really well and do some off-road, you know, your trails, your Jeep trails, some single track, things like that. It's a fantastic bike. And let me just take one last look at it here. This is our motorcycle, the G650GS SERTAO. Boom!